So we are concerned, as I said, in terms of the escalation of violence. On the one hand, we are concerned in certain areas where there is great exposure to violence and there is vulnerability. We are also concerned about the systematic and widely practiced abuse of presidential power and authority. And hi, I'm Arjuna Parakrama, Chief Operations Officer of the Center for Monitoring Election Violence, CMEV.
Professor, if we are to talk a bit about the experience you've had for the past couple of weeks with election monitoring, how is it going?
Well, the initial period from the 15th of August until about the beginning of September, maybe the first week of September, was relatively peaceful and quiet, and we were very happy that there was no really violent incidents. There has been consistently the abuse of power and sort of election-related violences that are usual. But unfortunately, in the last week to 10 days, violence has escalated quite a lot, both in intensity and that is in numbers, as well as in severity, that is in the extent of it. In fact, we've had reports of 2 murders in the last few days. We are not clear whether they are directly or to what extent they are directly related to the election, but certainly the persons involved are known campaigners and supporters of certain political parties. So that's, I think, the problem, that the escalation of violence leads to greater violence, and people then excuse that violence, saying it's elections on the one hand. On the other hand, the election violence is presented as non-election related, other kinds of disputes. So we have a situation that's a bit alarming. We have an increase in actions, serious actions, coming into election day. So it may be that it's peaking, and then it may spill over onto election day, and it may also go into post-election violations. So there are 3 major phases in any election: the pre-election or the campaign period, which in this case is the 15th of August till the 18th of September. Then there is what they call the cooling off period, where nothing is supposed to happen in terms of direct campaigns. The election day, which is the 21st of September, and then the post-election period. Now each one is significant. As I said, in the campaign period, the first 3 weeks seemed relatively quiet, peaceful. We were very happy that this was a new trend that we were seeing, where the campaigns were restricted to discussions against each other, verbal attacks and so on, but nonetheless no physical violence of an appreciable nature. Unfortunately, in the last week to 10 days, violence has escalated in terms of severity, that is in terms of the impact or the seriousness of the violations, as well as in terms of the number. So if you take a concrete example, on the 16th of August we had recorded 9 incidents. Now we record 96 incidents, which is 10 times that. And as I said, we have had 2 reports of murder. We are not quite clear to the extent to which the election resulted in this, but certainly there are connections between the persons who were deceased, the persons who were killed, and the political parties. Many of them, both of them were strong adherents of political parties. So there is that concern. The issue is violence breeds violence, and we can see that the escalation of violence is blamed on the election on the one hand, and the election violence is then pretended to be violence that is of a personal nature. So it's difficult to distinguish, but the trend is bad. It may be peaking and then may spill over. This is our fear. It may spill over onto election day in selected areas, as well as move into post-election period. So the point to be made here is, it's not the number of incidents that are an issue, but it's the severity and the impact they have. As you can understand, one incident can have a much bigger impact than 10 or 15 or even 100 incidents on the other side. So that's what we need to worry. We are troubled, worried, anxious about this trend as we go into the election day, which is crucial. In addition, there are areas in the country, the northeast and plantation areas to name a few, where other conditions work against a free and fair election. The presence of the military, militarization, the whole criminalization of Muslims in many ways, and the plantation, particularly with the new instruction to suggest that the plantation authorities, the estate managers and owners, have a role to play in the production of temporary IDs for people who need to vote in the plantation. Now that is to bring in an entirely different and to reinforce that hierarchy, and then therefore to jeopardize the independence of the voter of the plantation. So we are concerned, as I said, in terms of escalation of violence. On the one hand, we are concerned in certain areas where there is great exposure to violence and there is vulnerability. We are also concerned about the systematic and widely practiced abuse of presidential power and authority, and this ranges from the impunity which he is able to sack members of state ministers and other members of staff, the way his own media unit operates in many ways like a fake media unit promoting his policy. So there is a clear merger, an indistinguishable connection between President Wickremesinghe, the incumbent, and President Wickremesinghe, who is only one of 39 candidates. Now the identification of one with the other leads to abuse. In other countries, of course, there would be caretaker regimes and there would be other kinds of mechanisms by which this abuse is minimized. Sri Lanka does not have that. It's also difficult, it seems, to the Election Commission also to enforce these kinds of regulations because of the absolute and complete power that the president has. So the president is exercising his authority, but is he the president exercising the authority, or is it the candidate for presidency who is exercising authority? Certainly, in terms of the election, Presidential Election Act number 15 of 1981, we see from the president and the president's office clear violations of section 78, which is undue influence, and section 79, which is bribery. We are very clear, we have made the complaints, they are absolutely clear, but we have not got any ruling from the Election Commission because I think their hands are tied too. So they are in a sense, I think, suggesting that if we have a problem, we go to a court of law. So that makes it a bit strange. We also have the Campaign Finance Act, which is again, unfortunately, a bit of a non-starter because of the provisions are so vague. There is no teeth for the Election Commission to prosecute. The public has to prosecute, or entities like us have to prosecute, and there is no time to do that. The parties and the candidates have 21 days in which to identify their costs, right? And of course, it's only one ceiling, a total ceiling of 1.8 billion rupees. It should be capped at various stages for, say, advertisements, for rallies, for transport. That's not done. So it's not practicable, it won't be implemented. It may be okay as a starter, but it's certainly not going to be a big influence in this election. So we have the issue then, as I said, escalating violence on the one hand. We have abuse of presidential power and authority increased because there is no local government or provincial administration, elected administration to intervene, so that absolute power is there. We also have the question of post-election and election day problems which may occur because of the law being again unfortunate, to say the least. The elimination of all candidates other than the top two in the counting of preferences, if any one candidate does not get over 50% of the vote, is going to cause many problems, both in terms of perceptions of justice as well as logistical and practical problems in counting the second and third preferences. The person who has come third on the list can justifiably feel aggrieved that he has been unfairly removed, because it is possible for the third person to get preference votes and go beyond the second and perhaps even the first. So therefore that the law is weak there, it's wrong in that sense, but we are forced to implement that. So when two people are selected for to evaluate the second and third preferences of the others and to reduce the third in order, who may even have 2 million or 2.5 million or even more than that votes, would seem like a travesty to his supporters, which may lead to situation. And then of course you have the hiatus where everything will stop for the period in which the second and third preferences are being counted. The Commission seem to think this will take 3 hours. It's my view that it will take more than 6 hours.